Welcome back to Tanya, chapter 14. So, after giving the meaning of the Beinoni, which is the one who has emotional struggles for evil things, besides for temporarily during the time that the love of God and the awe of God is shining, like during prayer, and nevertheless, even though he has an emotional place and enjoyment in evil things, he overcomes it and doesn't let it enter his thought, speech, and action in his brain, mouth, and limbs of the body, thanks to the help that God gives the mind to be able to naturally control the heart because of the dormant, the hidden love within his heart. Now we're getting to the punchline. And that is that this is fitting for everyone, every single person. Perek Yudalid, chapter 14, V'hine midat habeinoni hi midat kol adam, v'acharei kol adam yimshoch. The attribute, the level of the Beinoni is the attribute for every person. It's suitable for everyone. And every person should and must strive after that level. Because every person is able to be a Beinoni at every time and every hour. Because the Beinoni doesn't despise evil, for that is something handed to the heart to accomplish. And he doesn't despise it. Definitely, not constantly, not always. Even though there's times where he might actually hate evil, like during prayer, when, again, like we said, the love of God and awe of God is aroused. But that's temporary. So, what does he do? What is the Beinoni? It's practical. It's practice. Turning away from evil, abstaining from sins, and doing good, pursuing good things, which is the 613 commandments. That's practical. What's practice? Not the heart, which is something emotional, but practical, physical, literal thought, speech, and action. For in those things, thought, speech, and action, there's free will and ability and permission given to every person to do, to speak, and to think even something that is against the desires of his heart and opposite them, literally. Someone can have a burning desire for something evil, but he has, and that maybe he doesn't have free will to do. We'll actually address it at the end of this chapter. But he has free will to control his thought, speech, and action. To choose, to think, to speak, and to act what is against that evil desire and what is the complete opposite of that evil desire. Even at a time when the heart desires and has a want, has a desire for any physical desire that is not for the sake of God and therefore evil, whether it is permitted, which is still considered evil because it's not for the sake of God, or forbidden, God forbid, he can overcome and divert his attention from it completely. And I think this is actually a big emphasis of the words la'asiach daito, to divert his thought. because the thought is the first thing that that starts. It's a chain of events. First, someone thinks about something, and then speaks about it, and then acts upon it. So the thought is the initial thing. So the most important thing is to keep the thoughts away from the evil. So that is the something that someone has free will to do. Furthermore, thoughts are compared to a river that flow constantly. The thoughts are always flowing. A person is always thinking, never stops. So a person has the free will to change those thoughts from one thing to another thing and to another thing again. So from some thinking something that is a sinful thought, that is evil, one has the free will and must change it to a thought of good. And that is the definition of diverting his thought, diverting his attention. To start thinking and changing the thought to something good. And that's why it's so important to be constantly occupied in Torah study, as we're going to see soon in this chapter. Because when a person's thought is full of Torah, then there's no place to think about evil, and certainly no place to speak or act upon it. So now, what would be the argument? Let's say his heart is burning. What would be the argument to tell his heart? To convince his heart, so to speak, not to do the evil, or to speak or think it. I don't want to be a wicked man, which is someone that allows the evil, or that the evil comes into their thought, speech, and action. I don't want to be that. Even for 1 second. Why not? Why don't I want to be a Rasha? Because I don't want to be separated and disconnected, God forbid, from the one God in any way. As it says, your sins separate. And that is that when a person thinks, speaks, or acts something that is evil, then they are bringing their entire thought, their entire speech and action, entire life force into the whole realm and domain of the other side that is evil, the other side that is against God. So when a person does that, then they are saying to God, goodbye. I'm okay without you. I'm distancing myself from you. I'm separating myself from you. Instead of involving myself in holiness, goodbye. I'm going to involve myself in the other side. Again, this man continues saying to his heart, instead, all I want to do is attach my nefesh, ruach, neshama, I think refers to my action, speech, and thought to the one God. With their expression in his three garments, God's three garments, which is the action, speech, and thought about and in regarding God and his Torah and his mitzvahs, his commandments. From the hidden love of God in my heart, the love for God, like that it's in the heart of the general populace of the Jewish people, which are called the lovers of your name. So a person can convince. This is the argument that the Tanya is giving you. to convince your evil inclination to stay away from evil and to abstain from sin in thought, speech, and action. That every time I'm sinning, you tell yourself, or this person tells himself, every time I'm sinning, I'm disconnecting myself from God. I'm removing myself from God's realm. And I don't want to be disconnected from God. I want to be always connected to God because I love Him. In the deep inside, I know that I love Him. So how could I want to be disconnected from Him? Now even those irreverent Jews, the most irreverent Jews, which are so because transgressing sin for them is light in their eyes, has the ability, as we'll explain later in Tanya, to give his life away for the holiness of God. Because naturally a Jew wants to be connected to God, and even a challenge so great as giving up one's life, a Jew is ready to do and to overcome, to give away their life. The irreverent Jews even. And not the Jews that care about God, all Jews care about God. Not the Jews that are sitting in shul all day and davening and learning. I'm talking about Davka. Specifically the Jews that are, let's say, not caring. They don't care about God. They don't care about Judaism. That's what so they say. Against their will, so to speak, they'll give up their life for God and deep inside they love Him. And someone, even that person, that would give himself up, their lives up for God, this person tells himself to his heart, again, the argument that he's convincing himself, I don't want to be less than that person. I don't want to be lower than those irreverent Jews. So instead, how come these irreverent Jews do sin? Because they have a spirit of folly. As we said, we quoted our sages earlier, that a person only sins because of the spirit of folly that overcomes him. What's the foolishness in sin? Because he thinks that during the time of this sin, he's still in his state of Yehudi, being Jewish. Jewish, Yehudi. Why are the Jewish people called Yehudim? They get their name from Yehuda, which was one of the 12 tribes. And why was his name Yehuda? Because his mother said that this time I'm giving thanks to God. Apam odet Hashem. I'm giving thanks, I'm acknowledging God. So the name Yehudi, the name Jew, means those that acknowledge God. And that's what is given to all the Jewish people, the name of Jew, which means to acknowledge God. So when a person sins, they think that they still are a Jew. Not, obviously they're still Jewish, deep inside, but they are not fulfilling the meaning of being a Jew, which is acknowledging God. And even though they think they are. And they think that at the time of sin, their soul is not separated from the God of Israel, which, as we said before, at the time of sin, a person is taking his soul and saying, goodbye, God, so to speak. I'm going to go stick to the other side, stick to the evil, stick to the side of evil. So through doing that, they are distancing themselves and separating themselves from God. And this person that sins, this irreverent person that sins, also forgets about the hidden love of God in his heart. So This guy's mistaken. He's making all these mistakes. He thinks that these things don't happen when he sins. But I know the truth, that this is actually the severity of a sin. And therefore, the man says to his heart, I don't want to be foolish like him, to deny the truth. It's denial at the end of the day. Someone that sins, he has a foolishness, which is denial of the reality that happens at that time of the sin, which is, as we mentioned, that is practice, free will a person has in his thought, speech, and action. Something that is granted to the heart. That is, that the evil should be despised literally in his heart and hated with complete hatred, or even if it's not complete hatred, but there's a hatred of evil, at least on a certain level. This is not really possible to be fulfilled in its true form. Which we said earlier, the definition of truth is based on a person's level. The only way it can really be fully and truly on the level of a tzaddik fulfilled is through the great, strong love for God, but with a love of delights, which is delighting and having taken pleasure on God, similar to the way it was going to be in the world to come. Where over there's such great pleasure. In the world to come, there's extraordinary amount of pleasure of God. So someone that has such pleasure and love, that will allow them to hate evil truly. And as we said, that's the tzaddik. But that's not a Beinoni. That's not expected of a regular person, of every person. In fact, a regular person doesn't have the free will to actually accomplish that truly. On that level of pleasure for God, the sages of blessed memory said that the phrase, your world to come, you should see in your lifetime. It means all the good, all the pleasure in the world to come, you should see now, in this world. Chudu, etc. But not everybody merits this. That is something that needs merit. It's not something based on a person's free will. This is like already a receiving of reward. By the way, our world is called Hayom La'asotam. Our world is the world of action, that we need to actually do things. And the next world is the world of receiving reward. So this world is not the world of receiving reward. However, there are some that merit to receive some of their reward, like a taste of that reward in this world. As the verse says, that a service that is a gift, I will give your priests. That's a verse. As we explain somewhere else, we explain at length later, I believe this is referring to the introduction of the second part of Tanya, that this love is only granted to a few. And therefore, Job said when he was complaining to God, how come some people are created this way and some people are created that way? Some people are created rich, some people are created poor. He said some people are created righteous, some people are created a tzaddik. That means that the initial assumption we had is that a person has no choice to be righteous. Doesn't have free will. That's what Job is saying. And that's Torah, and that's true. that a person doesn't have free will to be a tzaddik. Oh, but what does a tzaddik mean? A tzaddik means what we just said, to have a true love of delights of God, so that he hates evil in his heart completely and truly. And that is something that you don't have free will. Yeah, indeed. It's something that you have to merit, as opposed to thought, speech, and action, which you do. As it says in the introduction to the Zohar, that in the souls of the Jewish people, innately, there's different levels. And by the way, we touched on this in the introduction to Tanya. We said that there's different souls, there are different types of souls within the Jewish people. The quote from there is Chasidim Giborim from the quote from the introduction of the Zohar is Chasidim Giborim Amitkabrim Alitz Chamari Torah Neviim Chulu Tzadikim Chulu and Sham, pious ones, which refers to those that naturally are kind, strong ones that overcome their evil inclination, which refers to those that are severe naturally, the masters of Torah, prophets, and here's the big word, tzaddikim. Naturally, there are certain souls that merit to be tzaddikim, and they're special, and other people don't have that merit, which is the definition that we just gave. Ayin Sham, see there. So now you can understand the oath the fetus has before it comes into the world, that it is given. It's a double oath. Be a tzaddik, and don't be evil. Don't be a rasha. Be righteous and don't be wicked. So it's a question. Once you're giving the fetus the oath to be righteous, a tzaddik, why do you have to give him an oath that he doesn't be wicked? If you're telling him an oath to be righteous, then why do you have to give him a double oath not to be wicked? He's obviously not going to be wicked. If a person's going to be righteous, then they're obviously not going to be wicked. So why do you have to give him two oaths? The second one is extra. One of them is extra. The answer is as follows. Because a person, not everyone merits to be a tzaddik. Not every person merits to reach the level that he has full emotional control over the evil in his heart, to despise evil and to hate evil. It's not something for every person. And a person doesn't have free will to choose to do it. Kol kach, so much so, to take the light on God truly, and that the evil be truly despised, literally. Not everyone merits that. And therefore, we tell this fetus, hey, we understand, so to speak, that you're not necessarily going to be able to fulfill the first oath, which is to be a tzaddik. So at least, don't be a wicked man. We give him the second oath, don't be a wicked man. At the very least. In this, there is free will given to, an ability given to every person to rule the spirit of desire in his heart and overcome his evil inclination. That he won't be, that he shouldn't be a rasha, an evil man, even for 1 second, all the days of his life. Whether when it comes to turning away from evil, abstaining from sin, or pursuing good and doing positive commandments. Ve'ein tov ela Torah. And there's only good. There's nothing good other than Torah. Dahainu Talmud Torah Keneged Kulan, which means the study of Torah that is equal to all the mitzvot. That one of the things that a person has free will, like we said, is that in practice, he doesn't be wicked by fulfilling all the mitzvot, and especially the learning of Torah. What's so special about the learning of Torah? That it's equal to all the other mitzvot. And when a person strives to learn Torah, this is my own input, then their thoughts will constantly be filled with holiness, and there won't be room for evil thoughts, as I mentioned earlier. But nevertheless, he also needs to set times of putting input in his soul. To try to get himself to despise evil. Like the advice of our sages of blessed memory, when they in trying to have a person hold himself back from a lust of women, they said that a woman is a flask full of feces, which refers to the intestines, to the digestive system, and a mouth full of blood, which refers to menstruation. And everyone runs after her, which is a thought that would cause the emotions to indeed feel a hatred toward evil, such as selfish lust for women. And the thought causes emotions. The intellect causes emotions. And when a person tries and sets time to think about the disgust of evil, then their emotions will actually feel a hatred to evil. The person should strive to achieve that emotion of hatred toward evil. Ukahai gavana, and similar thinking. V'chen kol mine matamim uma'adanim, and similar all kinds of delicacies. Nasim kachamat melechulu, all become like that, a flask full of filth. All delicacies in the world essentially rot in the end. V'chen kol tanugi olam hazi, says it over here, all pleasures of this world, hachacham roeh hanolad mehen, a wise person, which is someone that sees what comes after the present situation. Someone that sees not just what's happening here, but what will happen afterward. That what comes from from these delicacies, that in the end they will rot and become worms and filth. And the opposite. One should also use the time to try and to have delight and happiness in God, through the contemplation and the greatness of the Ein Sof, blessed be He, God, who is boundless, has no limits, has no definitions. According to his ability, according to one's ability, a person should try, a person should think about the greatness of God, and I bring about it the emotion of love and happiness and pleasure in God. Even though in truth he knows inside then he won't reach this level truly, the level of a tzaddik, to have these emotions in a true form. Ki'im b'dimyonot, but only imaginations. So what's the point? Why should he strive to do something that it's impossible for him to accomplish? So now we're going to say that there is a possibility for him to accomplish this as follows. Af al pichen hu yaset shelo lekaymet hashvua shemashpim titzadik. He should do his part to fulfill the oath that administered to him. It's not him doing it out of nowhere. He's not creating something new. He already had an oath to be a tzaddik. So he's just fulfilling his oath. And when he strives to fulfill that oath that was given to him when he was a fetus, maybe Hashem will do the good. Hashem will do the good in his eyes. As we'll see as follows, or maybe that means to actually have true emotions that a tzaddik has. Another point, when a person accustoms himself to do something, it becomes natural to him. It becomes second nature. He has the rule and the control to be able to actually do it. It becomes a second nature. So when a person is accustomed to thinking and having these emotions, then it will become second nature to constantly, naturally have emotions and thoughts and emotions like that. And when he accustoms himself to hate evil, then it will despise a little bit in truth. And when he accustoms himself to be glad, for his soul to be happy and joyous in a God, through contemplation in the greatness of God. Famous statement. When his arousal from below causes an arousal from above. That means that a person has to do only 5%, and God will do 95%. And that's the way that service of God works. You do a little bit to try to feel these emotions of love of God and hatred of evil, just 5%, even 1%. And God will do to you 99%. God will do the rest. And so much, maybe there's a chance. Maybe, perhaps, will descend upon him a spirit from above, and he will merit to have the spirit from a certain soul of a tzaddik that will impregnate inside of him. And this is very similar to Gilgulim, reincarnations. That there's a concept that a soul can be reincarnated into something else that's unnatural to it, to a plant, to an animal. However, it's different, because in the case of reincarnations, the soul becomes limited and stuck inside of the body that it's in. However, here, when it comes to the spirit of the tzaddik soul becoming impregnated in a person, that spirit is not limited in the person. It's just shining from above, and it can be disconnected. It's not forced to be there. And this spirit of the tzaddik, it causes him to be able to serve God with true joy. As it says, Simchu tzadikim Hashem. Rejoice tzadikim in the plural, which refers to both the person and the spirit from the soul of the tzaddik that comes into him, in God. And he will fulfill in truth the oath that he has administered to be a tzaddik. Thank you very much for joining, and we'll see you next chapter.